Hello and welcome to Nurbs Modeling inside of Maya. I'm your instructor, Domika L. Cunningham, and what we'll be looking at today is actually how to construct NURB objects inside of Maya. So for most people, they're probably pretty familiar with polygonal um, geometric surfaces and maybe even subdivision surfaces. But one surface that doesn't get much love inside of the world of Maya is actually NURBS surfaces. So what is a NURB surface? A NURB surface is a non-uniform rational B-spline. And I know some people out there in their chairs are like, what in the world is that? Well, simply put, that a NURB shape is actually made up of 2D, a NURB form rather, is made up of 2D shapes. So let me show you something actually very quickly. So here inside of Maya, I'm going to make sure that I'm in my surfaces set inside of Maya. And you'll see I have an edit curves, surfaces, and edit NURBS menu that's been added into my menu bar up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to create, and I'm going to go to CV curve tool, and I'm going to click on the option box. Now with this option box open, I'm going to hit reset tool. My tool currently right now, this is the default way that this tool would be set. So always make sure you reset your tools in case you've changed anything, or maybe somebody else is using the computer before you and they changed something. So you always want to make sure that you're using it with the right kind of parameters set up to it. So I've got this CV curve tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to click in my viewport 1, 2, 3, and then 4 times. Now, what you'll notice is, and if you know anything about mathematics, geometry, you will realize that when we made this curve, it was a 3 cubic curve. So a 3 cubic curve means that I need to have 4 points to actually make that 3 cubic curve show up and become real. Now, if I were doing linear, I could actually just do linear, and it would be 2 points to make a linear line. If I did a 2-degree curve, it would need 3 points, and then so on and so forth. So that's really how I make my curves, and these are considered curves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and draw another curve. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'm going to hit Q to end process and come in here again and zoom back down and come in here again, and I want to once again make 4 points. So I'm going to come back to my last tool that I used, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 points, and come back in here once again, and 1, 2, 3, 4 points, and then Q to end process. So I've got these 4 points in here inside of Maya's viewport. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that these NURBS curves are properly, one, they have to make sure they have a proper parameterization to them, so they're parameterized correctly. So I'm going to hit Control A on the keyboard, and when I do that, you can see this is the attribute editor, and it shows me the attributes for this current curve. This current curve has a min value of 0 and a max value of 1. Now this min value is correct, and this max value is also correct, but this max value could be different. Now right now I have 0 and 1. Now if you look, I have 1 span. So the maximum number is always equal to the, well, it can be equal to the amount of spans. So if I had 0 and 22, well, as long as I had 22 spans in here, then that curve would be properly parameterized for me to be able to use it making NURBS surfaces. Now you can also set a curve to 0 and 1. Now when a curve is set to 0, 1, it's still properly parameterized, has the proper parameters to be able to use that as a NURB surface. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to show you what the sub-objects of a NURB surface are. I'm going to right click on this surface, on this curve rather. So on this Nurbs curve, you can see I've got control vertex, edit point, hull, object mode, and then curve point. Now when you're editing your Nurbs curves, you really want to use control vertices or control vertex. These work just like normal vertices do for a polygonal object. So when you move them, you can see I have this line that tries to stay smooth between them, and that's really it. If I come in here and I look at curve point, well, curve point lets me set these points on the curve, but it doesn't really do anything with them. And we'll talk about what they will do later on. And then I have my edit point, and my edit point is kind of the same thing, where I get to, kind of click on the edit points of this and move the edit points. And my last one in here, which is hull, you can see when I'm in hull mode, a hull is basically a complete line. So I can move that whole entire line in hull mode. So what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to go to control vertex mode. So I can right click and do control vertex on that. I'm going to right click and do control vertex on this one. And you can see both of these actually show up now. So I'm going to select over both of them. Actually, let's go back to this. I'm going to select over both of these. And what I want to do is I want to actually snap these points to my grid, right? So I'm going to hold down the actual X key. So I'm holding down X on the keyboard. And I'm just going to take them and move them right there. Kind of get them snapped right to the grid right there. All right. Now by snapping them to the grid right there, I also snap them together to each other. So I'm going to hold down X and keep snapping these points down to the grid. And this guy right here, snap him to the grid. Right click, snap it to the grid. Keep going. Just going to snap these guys to the grid really quick. And snap to the grid. And then come in here, control vertex. Snap this to the grid, to the grid, to the grid. And right click on this guy once again. Hold X and snap it to the grid. Snap it to the grid. Snap it to the grid. Now I'll tell you, the more you can keep these, the better you are keeping these as clean as possible. So now that I have those, and I have all of those pieces in there, and they're all snapped together at the corners, I'm going to go back in here and go to object mode. If it will let me. There we go. We're back in object mode. So I'm going to select all of these curves. So I'm just going to drag a selection out over all of these curves. And what I want to do is I want to make a surface. So I've got my curves, and you see I have an edit curves menu. All these are all things that I can do with my curves right here. So I can do all of these things with my curves right here. So these are all great because these are all operations I can do on my curve. Now, when I look at this, I've got surfaces. Now, you need to have curves to make a surface. So the surface that I'm going to make a boundary. And if I click on this, boop, you might say, well, nothing happened. Well, if you notice, I'm still in wireframe mode, so I'm going to hit 5 on the keyboard to go to shaded mode. And in shaded mode, you can see that I actually now have a piece of geometry. When I look inside of my attribute editor, if I look over here in my attribute editor, I can see I have boundary surface shape 1. And there's my boundary that's in there. And you can see that these points are all in there. So you can see curve shape 1, 2, 3, and 4 all came together to make this boundary happen. And that's my boundary. Now, the really cool thing is that the boundary, I'm going to right click on this curve and go to control vertex mode. This boundary still has history from the curves. So if I were to take this curve and move this curve like this, then my geometry will move that way. So that's what's really nice, is that you can go ahead and you can use this, as long as you have history attached, you can use those curves to change the shape of your object. So that's a really great way to be able to work with Nurbs, inside of Maya and any program that uses Nurbs as its main modeling piece. So let's look at some other operations that I can do with these nerve curves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two curves right here, and I'm going to hit Control D and duplicate them and make myself two copies of these. Because for this next operation, what I want to do, and I'm going to snap these over to the grid. So what I want to do for this next operation is I want to do another little piece, and I need to set this guy up. So let's go in here and go to like my front camera. Actually, let's go back into perspective really quick. These are the two that I'm looking for. They're sitting right there. And there they are, right there. I'm going to get X, and I'm going to move these down so they snap to the grid where they need them to be at. So I'm going to get my curve tool, so I'm going to go create and say CV curve, and I'm going to start. I'm going to hold down the X key and draw my curve from here to here to here to over here. So if I hit Q to end process, go to perspective, I can see that I have this curve. I'm just going to move this curve right here over here, just like that. And I'm going to grab this right here and move it over, holding X to snap it. So I've got this curve right here. I'm going to hold X to keep it snapped to the curve, and I'm just going to move, or to the grid, I'm just going to move it back. And I'm going to duplicate it, hold X, and then move this forward to keep this on the curve. Now for this one here, I'm going to take this and go to Control Vertex mode, grab these two control vertices, and I'm going to pull this one down. Alright, so this is what's really cool. I can actually do something called a bi-rail. So when I look at this, I'm going to go to surfaces, and you can see I've only got a couple of surfaces in here. I can revolve, I can loft, I can planar something, I can extrude it, I can bi-rail it, boundary it, square it, bevel, or bevel plus. Right, so I'm going to choose bi-rail, and the bi-rail that I want, and I'm going to use a bi-rail 2. So bi-rail 2 is really cool because what it lets you do is when you click on bi-rail 2, you have to click on your profile curves. So what two curves make up the profile? Well, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to say bi-rail 2. And let's make sure we're not in the middle of bi-railing something. So, and get my second profile curve. And then I'm going to get the two rail curves. And if I hit 5 to look at this, actually, it looks like something went a little bit screwy. Let's check. Let's check and see what's going on right here. It looks like... So I'm going to do this again. So I'm going to say bi-rail 2, and this is a profile, and this is my second profile, and then these are the two rails that they belong to. And I think what I need to check is to make sure that these curves are all snapped together. So let's look at that and make sure that these are all snapped up nice and tight. Control vertex, control vertex. That's snappy snapped. And see if this is, and that's snapped up, and there we go. So you can see the reason why my bi-rail wasn't showing, and this is why it's so important for you to have those corners of your curves really snap together. They're not welded, they're just snapped together. So you see when I snap those together, I can get this bi-rail function that looks really cool. Now the way you use this bi-rail is kind of like this. When you actually have two curves, like two profiles, and this rounded curve is really the profile curve. If I do this, if I come in here and delete this bi-rail, I'm going to select this right here. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to move this actually on my surface. So there we go. And I'm just going to grab this and just change it up a little bit. I'm just going to push this down like this and go back in here and let's see if this works. So the way that the bi-rail works, so this is a 1, 2, 3 type of thing. Uh, currently, this curve here, these curves like this, these are considered profile curves. And then these two curves that are on the straight rail, these are considered rail curves. So if I did, bi-rail 1, if I came in here and hit bi-rail 1, it's going to ask me to select one profile curve and select two rail curves. And you can see it makes that shape all the way through. So it shows me that shape all the way through. Now, if I wanted to have two profile curves, I'd say bi-rail 2, and just click on 1, 2, and then select my rails one after the other, and you can see once again it gives me a brand new surface that works really well. Now, the third option in here, bi-rail 3, when I click on bi-rail 3, this lets me choose as many profile curves as I want. So if I go 1, 2, 3, those are my profile curves. When you're done getting your profile curves, you want to hit enter. And then it will ask you to select two rail curves, which is here and here. Now, one thing and one reason why my surface, once again, did not do what I really wanted it to do, I need to make sure that all of these points are realistically snapped to my surface in some way. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm just going to snap these guys. And now, the other thing I'll have to say is that your bi-rail 3 is really one of the most temperamental of the bi-rails. So let's go back here. Let's look at this. So I'm gonna undo this bi-rail, and it looks like this bi-rail might have failed. So I'm gonna say bi-rail 2, I'm gonna bi-rail 3 rather, and I'm gonna get 1. Yeah. But what really your revolve looks at doing is if I came in here and I'll just actually do another shape. I'm gonna come in here and draw. And I think that these curves might be a little wonky. So if I came in here and drew a brand new curve and I drew like this wine glass type of profile and hit Qt in process, if I come in here and revolve this around, you'll see that it tries to revolve it around my surface. Now the cool thing is this, is that one, if I go back to my front view, this curve right here, or the way that it does this revolve, is based off of where this axis is at. So if I came in here and moved my axis over here to this to be the new center, and delete this one, but then I come back in here and then I do it again, you can see that it gives me this shape this way. But right now, the reason why it's not giving me the true shape is that I have this set to linear curve. I'm going to set it back to cubic, and then let's hit apply. And my segments are really low. So, and this is set to polygon. So, and this is where it gets back into making sure you reset your tools so everything is set to where it needs to be. So it needs to be back into Nurbs. And when I hit apply, there we go. There's my nice goblet of fire. But you can see that just from that simple shape, I was able to make this goblet. Now, if I came in here, because history is still turned on, if I selected that original curve and then started changing the original curve, so if I came in here and changed this original curve, I can actually change the 3D shape, or 3D form rather. So these curves become very powerful because as I adjust them, they can actually change the resulting surface that I have based off of them. So this is a really cool, piece of geometry, or really cool, yeah, it is really a cool piece of 3D geometry to be able to work with. And I suggest that you get more into them. And what we're going to do is as we move forward throughout this little series, we're actually going to use Nurbs to construct a couple of different things, and we'll go back over some of the things like the bi-rail tools and how those work and other things like that. One of the last things we're going to look at before we end this lesson is we're actually going to look at the trim tool. This is a Nurb editing tool. So I'm going to go in here to my front view, and I'm going to go to create. I'm going to go to the Nurbs primitives, and I'm going to make a circle. I'm just going to drag a circle out here, and I'm going to hit 4. I'm going to hit the number 4 on the keyboard so that I can go to wireframe, and I'm going to get my scale tool, scale this down. So I've got my circle and I've got my surface. I'm going to hold shift and click on the surface as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to edit Nurbs, and I'm going to say project curve on surface. And when I do that, if I go into look at this in shaded mode, you can see that what it did was it took that two-dimensional circle and projected it onto this 3D shape. So why is that even, why do we even care? Well, we care because of this. If I click on my surface now and go back to edit Nurbs and I say trim, if I click on what I want to keep, so I'm going to click on the actual goblet and I want to keep that, and then I hit enter, you can see that what has happened is that the curve has removed out and it's trimmed out the shape of the stuff that I did not click on to keep. So, and I'll do that again. So when I do this, I'm going to select my object. I have curves on surface. I'm going to select my object, and I'm going to come in here and say trim tool. And you'll notice that everything has these dotted lines to it and kind of these border lines around the edges. If I click on a dotted edge like this right here, it would actually make the glass solid. And when I hit enter, the computer knows what's left over inside of the trims that should be cut out. So that's actually a really cool way to be able to make cutouts into objects and get it done with relatively no muss, no fuss, just to get something clean. Other thing I can do is I can actually come in here and grab this. I can hold right click, go to trim edge, hold shift, and click this trim edge, and I could actually loft between those two. So you can see how these tools are actually very powerful when you start working with them to getting your shapes built out in 3D very quickly. And in our next video, what we're going to start doing, we're going to start looking at how to construct a PS Vita inside of Maya using all Nurb modeling techniques. So by the end of this series, we're hoping that you'll have some great understanding of how to use Nurbs and model.